Good evening and welcome to the Fort Smith City Board of Directors regular meeting this September 3rd, 2024. Keep in mind these meetings are being televised live for residents who cannot be with us in person. At this time, I'm going to ask Director Neil Martin, if you would, lead the invocation, and Director George Cassavas to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, since you're up.
Pray with me. Father, we are thankful to be here tonight. We're thankful for the opportunity that you've given us to do the business of the city. And so, Father, I pray that you be with us tonight as we hear from presenters, as we contemplate, as we make decisions. Lord, I pray that you give us wisdom. I pray that you would guide us. I pray that our hearts would be in line with you. I pray that you would just be with those that speak to the board. You would give them wisdom. And, Father, I just pray that your will be done through this board tonight. Lord, we ask all these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Directors Rigo.
Here.
Good.
Here.
Morton.
Here.
George Catsavas.
Here.
Christina Catsavas.
Here.
Settle.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Okay, thank you. This time I'll ask if there's any member of the board of directors that might have an item of business not already on the agenda for this meeting. Okay. Seeing none, we will ask for approval of the August 20, 24 regular meeting and the August 27, 24 special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. This time we'll go to the agenda. Mr. Gifkin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on this evening's agenda is an ordinance amending the master land use plan map and rezoning identified property and amending the zoning map at 8800 Dallas Street, and our Deputy City Administrator, Maggie Rice, will speak to this and answer any questions.
Yes, on August 13th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to consider the subject master land use plan amendment and rezoning applications. The property contains an area of 12.38 acres and has 260 feet of street frontage along Dallas Street. The proposed master land use plan amendment to residential detached and zoning to planned zoning district will facilitate a 68-lot single-family subdivision with 2 detention basins, 2 street connections, sidewalks, and a greenway. 2 neighborhood meetings were held on August 1st and August 2nd. Approximately 30 neighboring property owners attended the meetings with questions and concerns regarding traffic, new construction, land use, aesthetics, property values, and building timeline. At the Planning Commission meeting, Brandon Herbert with Half Associates was present to represent these applications. 5 property owners spoke against the application, citing concerns regarding traffic, new construction, land use, aesthetics, and property values. In addition to those speaking, numerous property owners attended the meeting and raised their hands acknowledging objection to the application. The Planning Commission voted 8 in favor with 1 abstention to recommend the master land use plan map and zoning map be amended.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are there any citizens' comments on this item?
Yes, we do have a few. The first is Brandon, is it Hebert? And this is the applicant, so he will have 5 minutes for presentation.
Good evening.
Yes, sir, Hebert. I'm Brandon Hebert. I'm the applicant from HAF. Thank you, Planning Department, for putting that presentation together. I don't have anything more to add than what was at the Planning Commission meeting, just that I know the Boys and Girls Club is very excited about this potential sale of the property. They're going to use the funds from the sale of this to reinvest in the Boys and Girls Club, have plans for possibly a soccer field, a new teen center at the 8800 Dallas Street address. As well, there's some PZD additions that we've added. We're going to do additional landscaping along Dallas Street. We're also doing a greenway that goes, follows actually the Mobility Fort Smith plan that's not approved yet or not in ordinance yet, but we wanted to meet that requirement with this. We're doing a 15-foot easement, pedestrian access easement, and building the 10-foot path. The developer will build that 10-foot path as well. That goes from our public right-of-way on South 88 all the way up to the Boys and Girls Club on the west side. But I'm here to answer any questions, and we've got other applicants from Roush Coleman here as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, I do have a question. If it's,
Okay.
Is it appropriate now or not?
Let's see if we have any more citizens' comments, and then
Thank
we'll
you, Mayor.
circle back. Are there any other, Madam Clerk?
We have Jesse, is it Folker, that is here to answer questions. And then we have Josh Carson, that will get 2 minutes as an individual.
Okay. Mr. Carson, you're recognized.
Sorry, happy just to answer questions also. I checked the
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Are there any more, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Okay, this time we'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance with suspension of the rules.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance amending the master land use plan map and rezoning identified property and amending the zoning map, and this is for property located at 8800 Dallas Street.
Okay, thank you. This time we'll take comments from the board. Director Settle, you recognize.
Yes, so the gentleman was just up here. I've got a couple questions, if you don't mind. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. Looks like a great development. My two questions are really pertaining to how the development is going to interact with both schools, Chaffin and Woods. It looks like you've closed off any access you might have up through the back way of both Chaffin and Woods. Is there going to be sidewalks on these properties as they get to Dallas, or is there going to be some way to cut through to the back way of Chaffin and Woods for this development?
Yes, so there are sidewalks on one side of the street as required within the development. And then, I don't know if you have the concept plan in front of you, but that also shows the greenway that actually goes on the western boundary of the property.
Okay, so that's what that is right there, that
Yes.
public walkway?
Yep, that's a public access walkway, and we thought it was a great addition. There's actually already a public access easement
Okay,
from that point on South 88 that goes up to the school property,
Okay.
and so we thought it was beneficial to extend
I
that.
just want to make sure that you work with the schools so kids can go from that neighborhood to the school and back without going
Yes.
onto Dallas. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you very much.
Director George Casavage.
Sir, that's my ward out there, Ward 4. And I've been contacted by a lot of the residents in Brighton Place. And they have some concerns with the zoning, the traffic, especially around Brighton Point where you go around the curve there. Have y'all done a traffic study on that?
We did present a traffic statement to the city. The city did a review of the statement and said they have no concerns. There was additionally a gentleman on the planning commission who lives in that neighborhood who said, from his own opinion, that he didn't feel traffic outside of school was bad on, worse on Dallas than you might expect. So, but yes, we did do a traffic statement. City reviewed it and they approved it and said there was no concern.
Okay, the current zoning allows for duplexes?
Correct. Yeah, so we feel this is a less intrusive zoning because we're going from a duplex possible development, a higher density development, to a less dense single-family development.
Okay, and does anybody, do you feel that intersection between Brighton Point and Dallas would warrant a stoplight eventually?
I couldn't speak to that. I'm not a traffic engineer.
Yeah, well, I talked to Ms. Ross. She said that the traffic wasn't there to justify that at this time.
Ask the question again, sorry.
That it didn't warrant a stoplight at that intersection at this time is what Ms. Rice said.
It did warrant it?
Did not.
Did not, no.
But a four-way stop?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if a four-way
Maggie?
stop would be required at this time.
That's something that would have to be evaluated.
Yeah.
Based on the traffic statement that they submitted and then Director Snodgrass's
Yeah.
review, the impact to both of those residential collector streets, because the traffic will be split on Dallas and on South 91st. Ultimately, this neighborhood has two outlets. It's going to empty on South 88th, which will go out to South 91st and Dallas. And so the traffic will be split equally between those two, and the impacts to both of those residential collector streets will be minimal.
Okay. I really feel I'd like to have more time to discuss it with the residents, to let them contact you all and make some comments to what their concerns are, but that's up to the board. But I'm going to abstain on this just because I'm just not sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Director Good?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted the mayor and the board to know that I'll have to recuse myself as I serve on the Boys and Girls Club Board, but I have followed the process of these plans since its inception, and I think it's a great idea and a great use of the property. So thank you on behalf of HAF.
Okay, thank you. Director Rigo and then Director LaVon Morton.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank everyone involved in this. This is, an exciting and promising thing when people decide to invest in new home construction in your community. And it's amongst other houses and close to great schools and a great amenity in the Boys and Girls Club. And so I would imagine this would be a highly sought-after neighborhood. And I know I, for one, appreciate the investment that's being made by folks in this area. Thank you.
Director LaVon Morton.
I believe, Maggie, there were 2 public meetings on this where the developers were available and their consultants were available to answer questions from the residents. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so people have had a chance to come and ask their questions and voice their concerns, whatever they were, and be addressed. So,
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions from the board? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Well, Neil has.
I'm sorry. You good? Okay, thank you. Please call the roll.
Directors Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Abstain.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
Abstain.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passes 5 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 abstentions.
This time we'll entertain a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Good,
Abstain.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
Abstain.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
Motion passes 5 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 abstentions.
Item number 2.
Thank you, Mayor. The second item on this evening's agenda is an ordinance rezoning identified property and amending the zoning map at 6,000 Midland Boulevard. And again, Maggie will speak to this and answer any questions.
Yes, on August 13th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to consider rezoning property located at 6,000 Midland Boulevard. The property contains approximately 8.5 acres and is located on the east side of Riverfront Drive. Approval of the zone change will allow uses currently not permitted within the existing commercial light zoning district, such as event center, restaurant, a single-family dwelling, and other uses listed within the land use chart. A neighborhood meeting was held on Friday, August 5th. There were no neighboring property owners that attended that meeting. Mr. Abbott was present to represent the item, and there were none present to speak in favor or opposition. The Planning Commission voted 9 in favor with 0 opposed to recommend the zoning map be amended.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any citizens' comments?
We have Leslie Smith only to answer questions.
Okay, thank you for being here. This time we entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance with suspension of the rules.
So moved with suspension of the rules.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance rezoning identified property and amending the zoning map for property located at 6,000 Midland Boulevard.
Okay, this time we'll entertain board comments. Are there any? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
Yes.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
This time we will ask for a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Directors George Katsavas,
Yes.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item number 3.
Thank you, Mayor. The third item on this evening's agenda is an ordinance amending the master land use plan map and rezoning identified property and amending the zoning map in the extraterritorial jurisdiction area at 9800 U.S. Old Highway 271. And again, Maggie will speak to this and answer any questions.
On August 13th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to consider the subject master land use plan amendment and rezoning applications at 9800 U.S. Highway 271 South. The property contains approximately 2.74 acres and is located on the north side of Old U.S. Highway 271. Approval of the item will facilitate the use of 2 existing metal buildings for auto repair and general offices, as well as prospective future site development. A neighborhood meeting was not required in accordance with the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the UDO, and Mr. Alford was present to represent the item at the Planning Commission meeting. There were none present to speak in favor or opposition. The Planning Commission voted 9 in favor with 0 opposed to recommend the zoning map be amended subject to the following: adequate water and fire protection as required by the fire department and the utility department shall be established prior to occupancy. 1 tree shall be planted every 50 linear feet adjacent to U.S. Highway 271 South for a total of 14 trees. Trees shall meet the criteria set forth in UDO Section 27602(3)(f)(4) and 5. All outdoor storage areas shall be screened with a minimum 8-foot opaque fence constructed of wood or masonry. Trash receptacles shall be screened with a permanent opaque screening fence. All parking areas shall be maintained to prevent gravel from migrating onto U.S. Highway 271 South. All repair work shall be done in an enclosed building, and all outdoor lighting shall be shielded and directed away from the residential development in compliance with UDO Section 27602(5).
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone sign up to speak on this item?
Yes, we have the applicant, John Alford, which will have 5 minutes for presentation.
Thank you, John Alford. I'm here on behalf of my client, Bobby Altus, who filed the application to rezone this property. And the first item I want to discuss is that what you have before you is procedurally not what was approved by the Planning Commission. I obtained a copy of the transcript or the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting, and while there were discussions about from the actual planning department about some of the amendments and requirements that are included in this ordinance, those items were not presented as an amendment to the application that was presented by my client. In fact, I'm sure that Maggie might recall that at that meeting, at the end, it was kind of a rush. I think that because of the number of people that were there on the Roush-Coleman application, that the commission almost forgot to approve the zoning ordinance and quickly passed the ordinance to approve the zoning. But there was no amendment, no motion to amend the application to include all of these burdensome items that the city has included in tonight's package. The 8-inch water line, the tree plants, the screening, and all of that. And let me say to you, there are 22 buildings that have operated out there for the last 15 plus years that are on city water in the ETJ. And that to now burden all of these buildings with this requirement is really unfair, and they ought to be grandfathered in to their current use, even if they require some repairs or remodeling. They should not be required to spend $1 million to bring an 8-inch water line with pressure to this area just to continue to be able to place these buildings in a leasable condition. And again, that's 22 buildings leased. Maybe a couple of them are unoccupied and some need repair, or maybe they need to be remodeled for a tenant's particular use. So, and I've got the transcript that Maggie was able to provide to me today, and I had my assistant type the transcript from the recording of that meeting, and there is no motion to amend to include all of these city requirements. And I think under Robert's Rules of Order, a proper motion should have been made at the Planning Commission to amend the application to include anything that's additional other than the application. And certainly in the application that was presented, my client did not include any requirement to plant trees, bring an 8-inch water line, along with all the pressure that's going to be required to place a fire hydrant in this area. Many of these buildings, you already know, operate in this area. I believe Southern Tire Mart operates a building in this area on on the west side of Highway 271 and other commercial buildings that operate, and no one has ever required them to bring new fire lines and new pressure. If the city wants to bring it to the area to encourage more development in this area, then I would encourage the city to pay for it. You know, the city has just now got through paying for a water line and sewer line down Riverfront Road to benefit a property owner. And y'all approved that ordinance that said that you were building that water line to benefit the RV park that was being built, and you approved it in September of 2021. So if you're going to do it for that end of the town, then you need to step up and do it for this other end of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Okay, this time we entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance with suspension of the rules.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance amending the master land use plan map and rezoning identified property and amending the zoning map for the property located at 9800 US Old Highway 271.
Okay, let's have some discussion from the board. Director LaVon Martin.
Okay, I recall a discussion of an 8-inch water line on some other property that I think was also in the ETJ, and that property is located where relative to this property?
It's adjacent, immediately to the west.
Immediately to the west. So is the water line already run to the other property to the west?
It is not.
So the water line has never been run?
That's correct.
Okay. So I would ask, does the fire department think this is safe, or and utility think this is safe to operate these theoretically rezoned business without the 8-inch water line, which I assume is to provide pressure for Fort Smith?
Fire protection. They do not. Chief Fuller is here if you would like for the fire department to respond to that.
Yes, I would.
Good evening, directors. Mayor.
So the question is the 8-inch water line necessary to provide adequate fire protection?
The minimum required size for a fire hydrant is 6 inches per our state code out of the International Fire Code and
That's
the
the Arkansas code?
Yes. That's whether you're in a city, outside the city, in order to get a fire hydrant, it's a minimum size of 6 inches.
Okay, so and we're saying 8 inches.
I believe that come from the water department and
Yes, the utility department required the 8-inch line.
Okay, so I it's reasonable to ask for an explanation for the difference between the 6-inch and the 8-inch line.
There are two things that we need to look at. Number one is what's minimum, and then what is built to sustain the growth activity and the actual activity of the line that's being put in. Since 2018, we have had a minimum specification, I believe it was revised in 2021, that stated that all mains shall be an 8-inch. So that has been the minimum size line to ensure the proper flow, because if you have multiple buildings on that line and you have multiple fires, 6-inch, my understanding of the fire code, is what it is kind of the minimum size that you need to put out the fire for one building. We are looking at multiple. What if there's a house fire? What if there's a spread from that? So that's why we went with an 8-inch, and that's what also helps us when the chiefs are going through the ISO. We actually have to certify that our standards exceed that, and that's why we have an ISO 1 rating, as well as the great work that our fire department does.
Okay, so as far as the fire department is concerned, if you have a housing development where there are a number of houses located close together, do you require, is it a 6-inch line or an 8-inch line?
The minimum to mount a hydrant onto that public water line is 6 inches. That's just the minimum standard. Now, it depends on the type of structures, what they're being built from, the size of them, how close they are, what they're doing inside of them, like vehicles, remodeling and stuff like that.
yeah, okay.
That changes the gallons per minute needed fire flow for that. So a 6-inch is just a minimum standard based off of the code requirements. But that's not to say what they're building out there or what they're housing out there doesn't require a greater flow. And I think that's what Lance is trying to get at, is what they're doing out there is going to require more than what a 6-inch can provide.
Now, are we sure that what they're doing out there is going to require that? I mean, do we have any knowledge of what they're planning? And again, I'm just trying to be fair. I'm interested in being fair to all.
I have met with Mr. Altus, the father, and the property adjacent there to the west. I believe his ideal is to construct 8 to 10 story warehouse buildings out there that's going to require, I think they were right at 10,000 square foot each. So I do see in the future, if he goes with his plans, absolutely it's going to require more.
Okay, and once you get the line in the ground, it makes no sense to dig it up and put an 8-inch line in.
Correct.
What's the cost differential between a 6-inch line and an 8-inch line? Because, I mean, digging the hole in the ground is the same, and the cost of the pipe is greater, but, I mean, is it 10%, 20%?
Less than 10%, I would say.
Less than 10%.
I really would have to sit down and look at what the current price for PVC is or ductile. There would be a road crossing, but that would be no matter what size is put in, you'd still have to cross the road to get there.
Okay, so does it make any sense for the city to absorb the difference between the 6-inch and the 8-inch pipe? I mean, again, just the cost of the bare pipe. Assuming the install is the same, is that something we should consider out of fairness to the property owners? I mean, and I'm asking this to not just to Lance, but to everyone. I mean, we have put in lines before for economic development.
Mm-hmm.
And this will, in those cases, because it was a large piece of property along this road where there was a lot of open land, we did consider that there would be future development there. Mm-hmm. And we did pay for that. So I'm just asking the question, is it fair to consider that the city should pay the difference? And I remember some residential developments where they were putting in a certain size of line, and the city asked them, which was this required, the city asked them to put in a bigger line, planning for the future, and the city paid the difference. Mm-hmm. And those were out in Chaffee Crossing. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to apply the same standards to similar facts here. And again, this may not be much money or maybe some money, but again, we owe it to the people to be fair in these regards. And I think that would be something to consider in the interest of fairness.
Okay. Thank you, Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the conversation, directors. I'm about being fair, of course, but I know years ago the board had, along with the direction of staff, had committed to doing some development. We initially did the water, to the riverfront in our development, even before, the RV park had come to us. And I believe the extension we did just a couple of years ago didn't benefit the RV park. So we just simply can't go into every economic development initiative and put forth water lines. How do we decide which economic development projects are big enough and which are small enough? Is there a criteria? There's got to be. Thank you.
Director Christina Casavage.
I feel like I've asked about this before, and I don't remember who I asked, but I thought that the city was working with the Altus family to come to an agreement. Do we not have an agreement? Is my understanding that clearly?
On the fire side, I know we've met with Mr. Altus. We spoke with him October the 9th of 2023. June 17th of 2024, and here we are again today, just that I've been involved in. And the last meeting I recall, he said he was just going to bring the water line. I think he was on the agenda and then chose to remove himself from the agenda, that he was just going to do the water line.
I guess my question's for Mr. Alford. Could you share the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting?
Sure, I have them typed here, transcribed. I'm happy to pass them around, make a copy, or
I'll
email
take a
them.
look. So is your client is happy or unhappy with the way this is presented to us today?
Well, he's unhappy because his application didn't include all these additional requirements, everything from the 8-inch water line to the tree planting issues. And so that was not what he applied for. And again, I don't think that's what was approved by the Planning Commission. Maybe they adopted it by just because the City Planning Department read what they recommended, but it was not presented as a motion to amend the application. And so what I'm saying is what you have before you is not properly before you in the ordinance that's presented. And again, I was there, I was present at that meeting. I actually listened to the tape this afternoon. I had my assistant type the transcript without even telling her first what I was looking for. And then after I read it, and I didn't see it in here as far as any motion to amend, then I went back and listened to the tape, and I did not hear anything about a motion to amend and adopt these additional items as part of the application. So I think your choices tonight are to send it back to the Planning Commission for a review, or simply approve it as the Planning Commission approved it without these items attached to it. And so, I think that's what the choices are.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at those if you don't mind. I guess my confusion came from, I thought all the parties had been able to sit down together and work everything out.
Well, let me say,
for everybody.
Excuse me, just 1 second. I don't know what happened last year, and I understand that Denny Altus had presented his own application for a building that he owns. This one's owned by Bobby. I did not represent Denny at that meeting back, I believe it was October of 2023. Yes, October 2023. So I don't know what he may have committed to or may not have committed to. I've not had any conversation with him with regard to any conversation with the fire chief. I will say this, the cost includes not only the additional size line, and there's been some controversy even among the engineers, I think, about the size of the line, but it also involves pressure in this area. And so the estimate from Brixey engineers to do what the city requires is over $750,000. And again, these are 22 existing buildings. We're not asking about building a new neighborhood or building a new commercial development. We're talking about anytime a building needs to be remodeled in this extraterritorial jurisdiction that is already served by city water, do we have to now step up and pay $750,000 or more just to remodel our building? And that's the real issue here. We shouldn't have to do that. Mm-hmm. You should accept us as currently operated in the ETJ. And that's the point I think that needs to be made.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If you don't want to send those up, I'll take a look.
Would you?
Those notes, yeah.
I can give them to you now if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll take a look right now.
Okay. I think next in the queue was Director George Casados.
Well, I'll go ahead. I'll go after you.
What's the size?
Well, Levon's after me, so.
I'm sorry.
Well,
it was me, you, and Levon.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let Neil go first if it's.
Oh, go ahead.
Why don't we go in the order that we have it? Director George Casados, please.
Okay. Lance?
Yes, sir.
You know, I've been dealing with this issue for a lot of months between Altus's and the city. And, you know, I sense there's some tension here between the city and Altus, more than normal.
I don't know what it would be. We have a requirement that's an 8-inch line. That's the minimum size
Yeah.
line. So to Director Morton's comment about what happened out at Chaffee Crossing, they were going to put in an 8-inch line. That was the minimum requirement.
At a Buckhorn.
No, this is on Chad Colley.
Okay.
Okay. Our master plan called for a 12-inch line because our master plan exceeded the 8-inch. That's why we paid for the difference. But they started out with designing and being willing to install the minimum design spec for everywhere, which is an 8-inch. So all we're asking is that, to Director Morton's point, we hold everyone to the same standard, which is an 8-inch minimum size.
Well, okay, but to go back to Mr. Alford's comment, down on the river, the RV park, we spent over $2 million for a private business to get them water and sewer, which I voted against. I said this is going to set a precedent for other developers.
George, it was not for a private developer.
It's an RV park.
First of all, it was to complete a loop in a water line, which is by
Carl,
far-
that was just excuse.
No, it's not. We
Yeah.
also have the baseball stadium, the John Bell Jr. Park. That's what it was for.
And then $1 million out of Buckhorn for the barracks.
Thank you.
We did not spend $1 million at Buckhorn. I don't know where that number keeps coming from.
Lance, I was out there watching them dig that thing for I don't know how many hundred yards. Lloyd Sumter, the owner, he said, George, the city's paying for this, for a private business. I don't think Mr. Altus is getting a fair shake on this deal. I really don't. I think there were some words said in the past, and it's made some people mad, and this is the end result.
No, that's not been the way we've been dealing with them, and it was only about $100,000 for the work for Lloyd Sumter.
Yes, sir.
No, I don't. I'm not going to vote for this, Lance. I think I agree with Mr. Alford. Let's kick it back to the Planning Commission, let them rehash it, go over it again, let Mr. Altus and Bobby be here and talk to them and see what happens. That's my
Again,
position.
this isn't my item. This is.
I know. I understand that.
Sorry, Maggie. Don't mean to throw you under the bus, but
Yeah.
I'm just here to answer
I'm not,
questions.
Lance, I'm not accusing you of anything.
No, I'm just
stating the fact.
Okay.
However you feel led to vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next in the queue was Director Neil Martin.
Oh, okay. So do we really have an item on our agenda that did not get approved by the Planning Commission? Is it something different than what the Planning Commission voted on? And if not, if they are the same, what's the disconnect between Mr. Alford and I guess the city?
They are the same. And these conditions are all listed as staff comments on the staff report. And when the Planning Commission makes a motion, they make a motion contingent upon approval of staff comments. They include those staff comments. All of our applicants receive the staff reports in advance of the meetings, and they can review them and look at the comments. Additionally, if there are a lot of comments, as there are in this case, we typically send or call the applicant to let them know that there are additional comments. But the motion is made to include staff comments, it's seconded, and then it's approved. And that's what's before you tonight, is an ordinance that includes those staff comments, which are almost identical to the comments that were included in the ordinance to the property that is immediately to the west of this that was approved in October of 2023.
So when you call for a motion with the Planning Commission, do you say, I mean, what's the actual language that you use when they're approving something? Are they approving it with staff comments? Is that what?
Yes.
Is that physically said?
That is physically said every time.
Okay.
Or they amend staff comments. They'll say include staff, and then they'll amend a certain staff comment or whatever. But yes, sir.
Okay. What about these other 22 buildings? What's happening with water for all of them?
So this is a little bit of a different scenario. You have to remember that this property was undeveloped, essentially. The property to the west, where I think we're kind of confusing two different things here. The property to the west, Mr. Altus started construction of these 10,000 square feet warehouses without any sort of building permit or any sort of approval from the city, and then tried to get a water line and could not, because you can't have water. You can't tap into that 2-inch line for the construction that he was doing. And so then he retroactively came in, and ultimately, through a series of a bunch of meetings, we came to the agreement on these comments that were included in the October of 2023 ordinance for that property that's immediately to the west.
And these are the, I'm holding
Yes.
the ordinance that we passed in 23.
Yes, sir.
These are the same
Yes,
items?
those are those comments, yes.
Okay.
And you can see the first item on that is that Mr. Altus was supposed to submit an executed agreement within 30 days, and he did.
Okay.
And here's that executed agreement stating that he would install the required water line and fire hydrant, and he said he could do that within 400 days, which would expire December 5th of this year. So that was all of that property to the west. This issue is the property that's highlighted on your screen, this 9800 US Highway 271 South, and planning staff became aware of this when we received a business license application for this site for a metal recycler. And of course, the property did not have proper zoning, and they had started construction and added a scale and everything else. And so we had to get a hold of Mr. Altus and say, you're going to have to go through zoning to obtain the proper approvals to do the development that you want, which of course also triggered the extension of the fire line, because quite frankly, those land uses are intense and will need required fire protection. And so that's where we are. So the difference here is that these are developments, new developments that are occurring. The existing 22 buildings, they're probably on city water. I'm honestly not sure.
And they run to the west, or do they run
I
up to
think
the
he's talking about the ones on the south side of Old
Okay.
US Highway 271 South. I do know, following the large Smurfit Kappa fire of the recycler, Mr. Altus was required to install a fire hydrant close, because remember that fire was terrible.
Couldn't put it out.
Yes, it was. They fought it for hours. And so the fire department and the city did require Mr. Altus to install a fire hydrant to allow Smurfit Kappa to reopen at that location, or to open as a recycler at that location. And so he would be extending that line down to service these properties.
So we believe a water line, and this, I don't know if this is Lance talking.
It's up here.
It's up here, and it terminates up there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Terminates in the upper
Yes.
upper right portion of our picture.
Old US Highway 271 South.
Okay, thank you.
Director Andre Good.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate staff and other board members stepping up and correcting whenever we misspeak. And I do want to say that about myself. I did speak incorrectly. I just made the statement that I believe that the RV park did not benefit from the water line extension that we were working on. Matter of fact, I was just reading over some old emails back in 2021. And so, yes, the RV park did benefit from that. So I just wanted to correct my misspeaking.
Okay, thank you. Director LaVon Morton.
So, this is for Lance. What is the water line currently on this property?
2-inch.
2-inch, which has been proven in past situations to be inadequate for any kind of reasonable fire suppression. Is that
Yes,
accurate?
the last time we had a fire in that area in which fire department responded, it actually sucked the lines flat.
Oh.
So we had to go in and replace certain lines.
Okay.
That is one of the reasons it took so long to fight the fire, is because we could not provide adequate water.
Okay, so if this were on the north side of town, or adjacent to Fianna Hills, would the rule be the same
Yes.
on if there was an industrial development, 4 or 5 buildings there, and had a 2-inch water line, that they would have to put an 8-inch water line? So it's the same all over the city, because it says in the city rules. And I understand you did a good job of clarifying the issue in Chaffee where it was 8 inches and 12 inches, which solved a future problem for us, and we paid the difference.
Exactly, and and you said it very well. It solved a future problem before it became a problem.
Right. Okay, I understand. Thank you very much.
Director Andre Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Last question, and this is Carl or Maggie. I appreciate the board wanting to do the fair and right thing, but Mrs. Rice did do an outstanding job in specifying the details surrounding this particular matter. But let me ask you this, Carl or Maggie. You know, we deal a lot with unintended consequences, so we have to be forward-thinking. Just if we did support this for Mr. Altus, what does that mean for any other development, residential or business? Would they then have the right to come to the board and ask for water lines to future development?
In my opinion, I would say yes. Historically, the cost of development is on the developer, and this would be considered a cost of development, and that includes all infrastructure, including water lines.
Water and sewer, correct?
And streets and everything else that goes with that. Yes, sir.
Agreed. Thank you, Ms. Maggie.
May I have a quick question?
Director Neil Martin was next in the queue, and it will come to you, George.
All right, thank you.
Lance, why is there a 2-inch water line here in the first place? Why is there not an 8-inch water line already?
Because this is a portion of the James Fork that we purchased over 20 years ago so that we could extend water service for future growth of the city.
So we purchased it from whom?
James.
From James Fork.
Yes.
And so we just inherited it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Director George Kasavage.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to kick this back to the Planning Commission for further discussion. John, did you talk to the Planning Commission? Were you there? Did you have a chance to talk to them?
I was present at the Planning Commission.
But did you talk?
I spoke at the meeting, and it's on the minutes that I gave.
So you feel like if we take it back to Planning Commission, maybe there could be some...
Well, I don't want to predict what the result might be. Maybe they will. I did speak against including the water line issue in any resolution that they passed. And that's in the minutes that I gave to Director Katsavas.
Okay.
You argued against that in here? I should be able to see that in here?
Yes. It's on, I think my part comes in on the second page of the minutes that are transcribed. And if you'll note at the end of that second page, while that may be the intent, as Maggie said, that the board adopts resolutions as amended by recommendations of the city planning department, that simply is not what happened. There's no statement that they adopt the motion as amended in those minutes. And so if you walk out of the meeting, you assume that they approved your application as presented. Otherwise, they would either say they adopted as amended by the planning department's recommendations, or a commissioner would make a motion to amend the application to include those items. And as I said earlier, I think if you look at the end of those minutes, you'll see that there's very little type there, and that's because there's nothing on the recording. And as I said, they almost forgot to approve the rezoning item number 18. 17 is the amendment to the comprehensive plan, but item 18 is the actual rezoning of the property. And the commission, and again, I think many people were probably wanting to get out because they had spent quite a bit of time on the Roush Coleman matter earlier, and they almost forgot it. And so they quickly passed the rezoning, and that was the end of it.
Did you have a motion, Director Katz?
Yes, I want to make a motion to send this back to the Planning Commission. I'm sorry, Mayor.
Director Christina Kasavage.
Okay, sorry, I jumped in front, and that's why.
I just want to make a motion to send it back to Planning Commission.
Director Christina Kasavage, you're recognized.
I second that motion.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to say I agree with that. I think there's some confusion around this item, and you know, when we're talking about $750,000, that's a huge personal cost to any developer. So I think we owe it to do our due diligence and send it back to the Planning Commission and let them sort through some of this confusion. So I would agree with. I was going to second it.
Maggie, how long will it take to go back to the Planning Commission and come back to the board? Timetable?
They would be on the October agenda, the
Okay.
October's Planning Commission agenda,
Okay.
and the board's November agenda.
Okay.
Which ultimately would, if the board chooses to annex this property, because this property is within that area for annexation, this application would really be a moot point. I mean, I guess we would have to figure out how to make that work,
You know,
because
well,
both
I'd have to
the,
talk to the Altuses and see what they stand on that, but that's my motion, and I'm done. Thank you.
okay.
I guess, I hope.
Can I ask Maggie a question, Mayor?
Yes, go right
She
ahead.
did bring it up. So Maggie, is this in that new annexation area that's out there right now?
Yes, sir.
What happens if we annex it?
Well, the way that staff has set up that annexation ordinance is that any property that's within that island this is included within, if it has gone through the process to seek an extraterritorial jurisdiction zone, then we have taken that zoning district and married it to a city zone, so an in-city zone, so that their land use, whatever they were seeking within the ETJ zone, would work within the city zone. And then any of the property which is still zoned extraterritorial jurisdiction open 1, which this property is zoned open 1, would receive an in the city zone of open 1, which would be a new zoning district for our UDO, but it is going to mimic that ETJ open 1 zone. So basically what will happen is, upon development other than single family and duplex, anyone that wanted to develop within this island would be required to go through the Planning Commission and you all to seek a zone change. Of course, all of that's contingent upon you all approving the annexation and the amendments to the code that go with it.
Thank you, Maggie, appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second to table this item. Director Neil Martin.
So does anything change related to an 8-inch water line requirement with the annexation?
No.
Same.
Same. The requirements for the subdivision section, which is what triggers the water line, et cetera, is applicable to the entire city, extraterritorial jurisdiction, and planning
So
area.
nothing more stringent, nothing less stringent?
Not in terms of the water line.
Okay, thank you.
Director Levon Morton.
So, Maggie, question for you. What happens if we get to the end of the 400 days and the 8-inch water line has not been put on the other property that we previously considered in October of '23? What happens?
That is an excellent question. And in order to fully answer it, I would need to consult with the city attorneys.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Director Rigo.
Thank you. I just have a quick question, Maggie. If this were to return to the Planning Commission and a very clear discussion and straightforward discussion was had around the 8-inch water line requirement, is it your belief, working with that commission and dealing with them on a regular basis, that that's something they would once again approve as they did in our packet here today?
Absolutely. I think nothing will change.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions before we go to the vote? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
No.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
No.
Good,
No.
Morton,
No.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Motion is defeated with 3 in favor and 4 opposed.
Okay.
We vote on the
need to
agenda
vote.
item now.
Yeah, we need to vote on the agenda. Okay. If there's no further discussion on the item, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Director Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
No.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Nope.
Christina Katsavas.
No.
Okay, the motion passes with 4 in favor and 3 opposed. Therefore, because it did not acquire or it did not attain 5 affirmative votes for passage on its first reading, I will have to read the ordinance in its entirety.
Okay.
Tonight?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. Please read the ordinance.
Okay. I'm getting there.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the reading. Suspend the rules, suspending the reading.
Okay. We have a motion and second to suspend the rules and suspend the reading.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
I did.
Okay, got two. Okay, we need a motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Martin,
Yes.
Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas. Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed, and the ordinance is declared adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. This time we'll entertain a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
There is no emergency clause on item 3.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, on item 3, I'm sorry. I'm ahead of you, Madam Clerk. Okay. Okay, with that being the vote, we'll go to item number 4.
Thank you, Mayor. The fourth item on this evening's agenda is an ordinance amending the 2019 Unified Development Ordinance of the City of Fort Smith. And Deputy City Administrator Maggie Rice will speak to this and answer your questions.
Yes, on August 13th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to consider the following Unified Development Ordinance amendments: to amend Appendix A to remove container storage from the commercial heavy zone and require conditional use approval for that land use within the industrial light zone, and permit it by right in the I-2, which is industrial moderate, and I-3, industrial heavy zoning districts. To make some changes to a few of our overlay districts, removing crepe myrtle from the list of approved landscaping materials. We've already removed this from the list that is allowed elsewhere in the city, and this will make our overlay districts consistent with the remaining parts of the city. And then finally, an amendment to table 273011, which is our application procedures table. The Plan Zoning District rezoning application has an error, and this amendment will fix that error and make it consistent with 27341, which is the actual Plan Zoning District section of the code. And the Planning Commission voted 9 in favor with 0 opposed to recommend that the UDO be amended.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, did anyone sign up to speak on this item?
None indicating.
We need a motion to adopt the ordinance with suspension of the rules.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Please read the ordinance.
An ordinance amending the 2019 Unified Development Ordinance of the City of Fort Smith.
Okay. Board comments. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Directors Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Now we'll get the emergency clause. Need a motion to adopt the
So
emergency
moved.
clause.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Directors Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
It's approved 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Go to item number 5.
Thank you, Mayor. The fifth item on this evening's agenda is an ordinance declaring an exceptional situation and waiving the requirements of competitive bidding for the purchase of a water slide complex for Parrot Island Water Park through American Resort Management. Before, this is something that has been on the board's agenda and tabled, so we all know where it stands.
Okay. Are there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we do have multiple.
Okay.
The first being Joy McCutcheon. Each will have 2 minutes.
Joey McCutcheon, Fort Smith. This is a matter of priorities. Sometimes you have to make tough, hard choices. However, this isn't a tough, hard choice. We're not talking about the difference between having Parrot Island or not having Parrot Island. We're talking about adding more bells and whistles. From 1988 to 2005, the city violated 14 EPA administrative orders. From 2004 to 2014, we had 2,100 sanitary sewer overflows. That's 194 million gallons of raw sewage pouring into our streams and on our properties. From 2015 to 2021, we paid an $800,000 civil penalty for numerous sanitary sewer overflows. 2 weeks ago, we paid $590,000 for 481 sanitary sewer overflows. That's 15 million gallons into property and streams. And we're going to vote on having more bells and whistles on a water slide. How about Director Katsavis's idea? How about not kicking more sand into the federal government's eyes after from 1988 to current, we're still kicking sand and we're crying about how they are treating us poorly. I mean, if it's not, but sometimes it's easy when it's OPM, right? To my left up here, Mr. Rigo, it's easy, isn't it, Mr. Rigo, when it's other people's money you're spending?
I believe I'm to your right.
Well, no, you're much to my left.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Next, we have Terry Hargrove.
Hello, my name is Terry Hargrove. I'm a resident of Portsmouth. I think that we should prioritize fixing our water problems before we add anything else to our water park. It just doesn't seem like good management of our money. I can't believe I agree with you, sir. This is the first issue we've ever agreed on. But the idea that they're telling us that we're not paying our fines right, and then we're using money that we could use. Like, even though it's not earmarked for that department, it has the flexibility to be used that way. Mm-hmm. And it could help show how earnest we are in trying to fix things, instead of using other excuses like, well, the flood, well, the pandemic. It's just life. There's always going to be something else. And we need to really prioritize putting this money towards something that everyone benefits from. It costs the whole city when we put off these fines. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have John Giltz.
Hey there, Board. James Giltz again. It's nice to talk to you again. Unfortunately, it's about the same issue that we've commented about in the past, but it's been tabled. And I, again, am surprised to agree with some people in this room. But I do not think that this is a fiscally wise use of our resources. We've admitted in previous meetings that I've been in that the city has to pay maintenance on these slides. We're not turning an active profit from it. Not everyone in the city uses these slides. 70% of the people are coming from outside of town. It's not a resource for the city. What is a resource for the city is updates to, as has been discussed, our various water and sewer infrastructures. What is a resource to the city are sidewalks in places of high need, like near schools. What is a resource to the city is improved park infrastructure, improved funding that we could have go with other grants to get a big bang for our buck. I do not think that spending money on a business loser in the city that is going to increase our maintenance and is going to increase our water needs in a situation where we're already having to add additional piping for new water infrastructure due to overuse is an effective use of our money or efforts. I think that this would be a great thing that we could be thinking about if we were in a different economic position than we currently are. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
That's all for item 5.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Second. Okay, this time we'll go to board comments. Director Levon Martin, I
No,
saw
I
your
was
hand
first. I had my hand
Where
up
you?
first.
I'm sorry. Director Christina Casavas, you did have it up first.
You already forgot about me. You know, I just feel like this is really irresponsible. I'm really surprised we're even considering it. You know, I was against it when it was 2.1 million, and we thought the county was going to chip in half, and we were all kind of under the impression if the county didn't do that, then it was just dead and we moved on. And then it came up, well, now we're just going to pay for the whole thing, and we've got extra money, so we've got to spend it. You know, if we've got extra money to spend, it needs to go towards our water transmission line. I feel really strongly about that. You know, I took my daughter, I've got a 7-year-old daughter, and I took her to Parrot Island a few weeks ago, and she said, Mama, this is the best day I've had all summer. And it was with the current slides, with the current lazy river, with Tiny Turtle Island. You know, she didn't need extra water slides to enjoy it and have a really good day. You know, I feel very strongly that, that, you know, it would be financially irresponsible of us to pass this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Levon Martin.
Well, you know, I would agree with the people that are here. It is a very hard decision. You have to kind of think of the future and the present. I mean, it is important to realize the money for the city, parks and police and fire is completely separate from the money for the utilities. None of the money that goes for utilities comes from that side. We never take money away from police or fire or parks or streets to pay for the consent decree, because no city in the United States or county ever does that. You keep the books separate. Utilities is like a business that needs to pay for itself. So when we say, let's just move money over here, well, practically speaking, you really can't do that. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I can't speak to all the legal things. I know there are 100 reasons why you would never do it, and I would certainly never support that. I think this is an entirely different consideration than the consent decree, and using the consent decree as a reason not to do it is not a valid reason. You know, at the same time, it is a hard vote, and what you have to think of is the future versus the present, and how you want to approach that. You know, we've got, you know, and I've switched sides on this in my head multiple times. We've got a great asset here, and it's really something that other cities nearby don't have, and we get people from all over, and they do enjoy it, and especially the people in Fort Smith enjoy it. So, but the question I would have for Administrator Gefkin is, you know, I don't believe it's practical to approve these slides if we have this uncertain lease with the county, because we don't have any assurance of any more parking spaces.
That's correct.
We don't have any assurance at all.
That's correct.
And they have pulled out of multiple agreements that have been in place for 30 years or more, where the city would share costs with the county on a very agreeable and basis that worked well for both parties. And we also are having all kinds of trouble with the 911, which is a state mandatory arrangement where the county and the city, the state says you have to work together.
That's
and yet
correct.
I've been to the meeting, the most recent meeting, and they don't want to do it.
That's
so,
correct.
You know, while I think the lease, which we're going to have next, I think, is separate from the water slides, if we were to approve the water slides with the idea that, which has been presented before, we buy it and we effectively get it delivered and store it, and then in the future when we have the money, we get it installed. We would have captured, the advantages are we would have captured an asset that is probably not going to be available, or if it is available, it's available at a much higher cost in the future. But I have a concern about the parking, and in this lease that we have from the county, demolishing of the water park in 25 years or 30 years, whenever it needs to be demolished.
That's
And
correct.
that's completely unreasonable. That's we could never sign that lease.
Yes,
I mean,
that
they
was-
basically decided to impose that on us in a way that is just not proper. I mean, they said, we're going to go back on everything we've ever said. So the question is, if we say we're not going to do this lease, which means they're obligated for half the maintenance on the park, I believe. It doesn't say they're obligated for half the maintenance on a few slides. It says the entire park.
That's correct.
You know, first of all, we're liable to get in litigation with them over that. But I think we have a pretty clear lease. So I don't think we could ever enter into a lease with them, including the one we have tonight, with the terms that are there. So with that, I would say that it's a completely separate case. But in your view, if we do the slides, they still would be responsible for one half the maintenance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we are going to review our management company, right?
Yes.
And and I would say on the front end, I want a different management company. That sales tax mistake they made, inexcusable. There is no excuse for that. The $400,000 that they collected from people that never should have been collected, that made us have to do all the work to try to sort it out in the proper legal way, never should have happened. And their costs, their maintenance, their management fee keeps going up and up. I think we need a competitive bid on it, whether we do these slides or not. I think we need to take a hard look at this and some other things that are in front of us. So, I mean, those are my comments on this. It's a hard decision, and but the money is separate. The money is completely separate, and people need to understand that. And I'd be glad to meet with as many or as few people any day of the week and talk through this with them in as much depth as they want, and they can yell at me as long as they want to. So, and the same on the consent decree and where we are on that. I'd be happy to meet with any group in the city, as many people as you want, when you want, to talk about the details of this. I mean, this is financial stuff. It's what I know. I don't know a lot of the things that these other people know, but I do know finances. So that's my comment.
Director George Casavage.
Carl, I asked last week that the board could vote to use this money towards the consent decree, correct?
Yes, you did.
Funds. Okay. But the board votes for it, right? That the board.
If the board voted
Yeah.
for it, the general
Okay.
fund can go to whatever.
Well, here's my
I
position.
think last week you specifically asked about the water transmission line, and we were told that yes, it could be used for the water transmission line.
And or the sewer.
Yes,
Either one.
Either one.
Well, board, here's our chance to decide whether we're going to business as usual or take care of our priorities. And right now, our priorities are this consent decree. Now you're going to negotiate with EPA soon, right? You're going to negotiate with them.
Well, that's another agenda item. But
Yeah, and Director Martin, you said 156% increase, right?
That's correct.
Okay, why not?
156% over the course of the
Yeah,
remaining
yeah.
time for the consent.
Well,
Through
and
2030.
since Director Martin interrupted, I'm going to interrupt and say that is not what's going to go to the Justice Department. That is not going to go to the Justice Department that way. It's going to go in a way that keeps that to 3.5% for all those years. So take note of that.
Well, that's not a sure thing, though, Director Martin. I mean, a judge could get involved with this. And
No. If you write it in a contract and you agree, it is a for sure thing.
Well, here's what I'm saying, Carl. I would take this $4.2 million. When you negotiate with the EPA, say, listen, we're willing to put in this amount of money. What kind of terms can we get now? Do you not agree that would be
that's
some
an
leverage?
option. That's an option.
That's an option. Because people, we can't. No, people can't. I mean, you're looking at disaster for people. What did you call it, Director Martin? A killer?
Well, for my family, it's pretty.
Well, your family and mine and everybody else's.
I mean, having 6 people at my house.
Yeah, I know.
It's a $300 plus.
But I don't think
if those rates.
Is that 3.5%?
If those rates that were on the sheet were to be enacted, it'd be $300 just in sewer for me.
What I'm saying is, let's use this money to the consent decree. Let Carl negotiate with it and see what happens. You can always put it back in the general fund or whatever if something doesn't transpire in our favor. But these people are right. I mean, we've got to take care of our priorities first. I mean, people, you know what's going on in this country with the inflation and stuff. Thank you. And you all live it every day, and especially senior citizens, they can't absorb this. So let's just try to do what's best for the people on this deal. Thank you.
Director Christina Savage was next in the queue.
You know, the reason I'm so focused on this water transmission line is because we need, what is it, $10 million for phase one? Is that correct?
Phase one's already been done. Phase two, we've gotten a congressionally directed spending, so we've been tailoring the projects to the funding, the grant funding we've been able to receive.
So
But the
I got-
overall project is over $100 million.
Yeah, I know that. It was like $158 million, but we
Mm-hmm.
got an email a few weeks ago that said we need $10 million for it and we don't have it.
That was I'd have to look at Lance, because I'm...
Excuse me. That was in relation to the bridge project, which we don't know
Thank
yet.
you. Yes, that was for the bridge. Thank you, Jeff. That was for the bridge that we would need to provide that money to build the line.
But
the
it's
parking
tied
lot.
in with the water transmission
Yes,
line.
it is. You're right.
You know, so the reason I'm focused on that, it's because, you know, we're talking about water slides and we may not even have a transmission line big enough to get water to that side of town. I mean, you know, I have a business. I can't imagine running my business like this. You know, if that water park was making money and it could support itself and it could buy its own slides, I would be all for it. I'm not anti-water park. But you know, if my business starts struggling, I can't come to the city and say, hey, I need you to invest, you know, in some new inventory for me. You know, I mean, just as a business person, this just doesn't make sense to me. I think it's irresponsible.
Director Rigo.
Carl, would you speak a little bit to, if this were to pass tonight, what sort of the timeline on negotiating, acquiring, funding, budget process in out years, how long it would take, et cetera? That wasn't fleshed out enough in the memorandum.
For the slides?
Yes.
The board has an option with the $2.1 million that's already been appropriated to purchase the slides and transport them here, and not to build until a later date, or to then appropriate the remaining $2.1 million and build the remainder, to build the slides and the park expansion. The slides are on a relatively short time frame because the builder that's in Canada wants to obviously sell them, because the park that was going to have them did not, and that deal fell through. So there are 32 containers with the slides that are looking for a new owner.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Neil Martin.
No further questions, Mayor.
Director Levon Martin.
So those containers move by rail or truck?
Both, I would think. I don't know. We're looking for a cost now just to iron out that.
Where are we going to store them?
Probably at the facility itself on the available land, or in another location.
We're just going to lay them out on the ground?
They can be, yes. With the proper underlying. We could actually speak.
Well, yeah, I would say make sure we think through that really, really carefully.
We do have the manager of Parrot Island here who can answer that much better than me. Drew, would you come up here, please?
Well, things laying on the ground, I mean, I've not had good experience with that, so.
Drew's the one who's looking for the cost of shipping.
Yes, so the containers would sit, excuse me, technically on the ground, but they would be on pallets in the container itself still, so they wouldn't be exposed
Well,
to
now,
the weather.
so we get the containers too? I mean, are we having to rent those containers or what?
Until we decide to, in an agreement that we can further negotiate when we decide that we're going to buy them, of how long the containers will. But as of right now, with the shipping, they will keep the containers.
Say that a little more clearly.
Until we build the slides, as of right now, until we sign a contract, they let us keep the containers in the containers.
Slides in the
Okay,
containers.
so
The slide
who owns
parts.
the containers? I mean, I've never seen a situation where you just ship something in a container and you leave it in the container for months and you don't have to pay for it.
So Whitewater, the manufacturer of the slides, own the containers, and they know the situation at hand. Because they do want to sell them, they will let us keep the containers.
Well, whatever we do, I don't know how this vote's going to go, but if we end up saying yes on this, then we've got to make sure we don't pay $1 for those containers. including damage, and they have to be insured, as does the shipment itself.
Right, absolutely.
Because if the train has a wreck, we need our money. Yeah, I'm
if a
not saying it's
trucker
going to
does.
pass, but I'm just saying there are a lot of business precautions, and it applies to anything, that need to be taken to make sure this doesn't turn out to be a giant disaster.
Correct.
I mean, it's, you know, the county is trying to do that anyway. Pardon me for saying that, but, you know, we had a partner in the beginning, and we're going it alone right now. So that's, you know, the way it is.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, there are a lot of moving parts here. And thank you, Director Morton, for your comments describing how the monies are separated and can't be used for certain projects. Well, let me start with the beginning, where we thought we were going to go into partnership with the county. We know that they have recently been forced with a financial challenge. So that was on the horizon, obviously, before they took the vote not to partner with the city. And regardless of whatever the other situation is going on, where the county is pulling themselves away from the city, that's their business. But I'm on the mindset that we can take care of business and still do perks. So let me thank the people in the audience, all of you that came and spoke, because you're talking about the city being responsible of taking care of business and using city taxpayer dollars. So I don't believe that we're being irresponsible at all. So I had mentioned at the meeting before, you know, we're looking at these huge numbers that we're talking about putting $2 million towards the consent decree work. The consent decree work is $635 million. The $2 million that we're talking about additionally for the Parrot Island expansion is but a mere drop in the bucket. Sure, we could put it towards it, but it would be a mere drop in the bucket where we still are going to be short hundreds of millions of dollars. And the same thing with the water utility lines. We've got multiple projects, and I believe we are over $30 million going towards the upgrades of the water utility line and things surrounding that. So again, the $2.1 million that we're talking about in addition to the expansion of the water park is but a mere drop in the bucket. I believe the last time we talked about this, you know, I said that we could put that $2 million in on any project that we have and still be over $30 million short on the water line, transmission line, and the $600 million plus for the consent decree. And just to correct another statement that was made about the city not paying their fines, we are paying our fines. What we've gotten and what we have gotten put on us were stipulated penalties. That's not for paying fines, that's for not completing the work that the EPA said that we needed to have done by a particular time. So we are paying our bills. But we can't get, again, we've had plenty of people speak to why the consent decree work is taking us so much time. And I don't have to reevaluate, I don't have to re-speak on that, but that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Neil Martin, and then Director Settle.
One thing that Director Morton said that I just want to clarify. If we were to pass this tonight and put it in, and even if we had future expansion, and didn't approve the lease modification, the county is still on the hook for maintenance for any enhancement to the park, regardless of not just what's currently existing, but everything that we add. Colby, do you have something on this? According to the current lease agreement.
There is a current agreement between the city and the county. It goes back to 2012. It does obligate both parties to jointly participate in the maintenance of that park. You know, I think there's a question, you know, to be answered that I don't think is in the agreement is if one party wants to expand it unilaterally, does that obligate the other one to continue maintaining it? That's unanswered in the agreement.
Is it not addressed? What happens in a scenario where it's not addressed?
I've not read that in the agreement where one party decides to expand the park unilaterally, and there's no joint consensus. Of course, the parties could jointly do that.
Can you think about this from a legal standpoint, something not addressed nothing specifically addressed in a legal agreement? And I mean, I don't know if this exact scenario exists, but I'm sure there's something in legal precedent that kind of
the argument we would make, the city would proffer, is that it's maintenance of the park. You know, if the city expands it and has 2 more slides, 3 more slides, what have you, then the county should be on the hook for maintaining those per the agreement. I mean, the flip of that is going to be if the county didn't agree to participate in that expansion, why should it be on the hook for maintaining that expansion?
That would be their argument.
That would be their argument.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Director Rigo.
I mean, it may be a technical point, but we're speaking to hypotheticals and technicalities. I think it's important to remember that a majority of the quorum court voted to support the expenditure and the expansion. They just did not hit a super majority to meet a technical requirement that they have for appropriations. So I just think that's an interesting thing to recall in the story.
Thank you, Director Settle.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Drew, for being here. Appreciate it. To the board, to the public, to the citizens of Fort Smith. You know, when we proposed this back in the day with Judge Hudson, the public said, we can't afford it. It's the wrong time. We took it to the vote of people. 64% of the people voted for it. They said, we want a water park. We built a water park. Was it over budget at the time? It was, unfortunately. When he said, it's put a flow rider in. Oh, the economy is too wrong, let's don't put it in. We put it in. It's the most popular item out there. Would you agree with that, Drew?
Correct.
We need to put a slide complex. We put the green slide out there. Oh, we can't afford it. We put it out there. We do it. Kids love it. The lines are long. Am I saying that right?
It's the most popular slide, correct.
Yeah. Here we have an opportunity to continue that effort to do something for the kids of our community. Kids want to have something to do in the summer. We all made a commitment to do whatever we can to keep our kids here, to make jobs opportunities, to make Fort Smith a prime location for people to be here. We're the only city in the state of Arkansas that has something like Parrot Island. Rogers has got a water park, but it's nothing like Parrot Island. We have an opportunity to expand and make it better, to draw more people here, to help pay for sales tax, which funds police, fire, parks, and sewer work. So those people that draw here, that come here, had people from Kansas City down this weekend. They stayed at a hotel, they bought the food, they helped pay for sewer work, they helped pay for fires, helped pay for streets. That's what we do here. It's an economic driver. It is a popular place to be. The only year we haven't made money was the COVID year. That's it. We don't raise prices to do expansions because we want to keep the ticket prices low enough to cover the cost with minimal profit at the end of the day. 10%, I think, is at the end of the day, it's it. Could we raise prices like Six Flags and Disney? Yeah, we could. Would more or less people go there? Yes. But that's not what we want the park to be. We want the park to be for everybody. For everybody to be there. If we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? Well, and next year, in last year's CIP for parks, we had in 2025, we were going to spend $550,000 or $600,000 for a slide. What would a slide be off the green slide now? What's the cost today?
The new slide you were talking about, that one singular slide, would be 1.8.
1.8 million, 900,000 for us now to build one slide off the green slide. 4.1 to get, and that's our cost. 1.8 for one slide total, 4.1 for 5 slides. And expand the park by 400 to 500 additional people. That's construction, everything. All in, everything done, and 400 to 500 more people in that park. The opportunity is there. Yes, we can put it towards water, sewer. It'll go on the ground, nobody will see it. Kids won't see it. Families won't get an opportunity to go there. I'm asking each board to look in their hearts and realize this is not about today, it's about the future. Lavani spoke about it. It's about the future. We can set that path and have more things, because if we're going to use the adage that we just heard, then we should take every park project and stop doing them. The dog parks, the playground equipment, John Bell Park, baseballs, soccer fields. We do that because we want something for our citizens to have and kids to do. This is no different. We have a bike path that we want to do at the Atmic Brick Park. We know we're going to spend money there. Are we going to hear the same thing? No, we're not. This is a great opportunity at a great cost. I'm asking every board member, look in their heart and realize this is about the future of our city. We got all these new visitors coming here and all these planes coming. It's a great opportunity to make that park even better. Every city in the state of Arkansas I talk to is jealous of our park. Let's keep it that way. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Director LaVon Morton and Director Christina Casavage.
Director Kevin Settle makes some very excellent points, and I, you know, I've said this when this first came up, and we voted on the 2.1 million. You know, we are going to have a lot of people coming here from the outside, a lot of military people, and a lot of those people have families, and the military people that are coming here to be the trainers have families. The families are going to be coming with them. They have kids. It's something to do in the town that they probably don't have wherever they're coming from, because it's not that common, honestly. So, and a lot of them live on base. They live on base. There's no water park on the base. They live on base. And I also remember within 6 months after I first became a director, Director Martin and I gave a talk at Beard Elementary?
No, it was
Kavanaugh Elementary. And it was like fourth graders or fifth graders. And at the end of that, Director Martin said, because we knew that we had plans to buy the new slide, which at the time, again, this is 2019, he asked, how many of you would vote in favor of buying a new slide? And they voted with their hands and they voted with their voices, loud and strong. So kids love that park. And, you know, I think that, honestly, we are going to struggle with the consent decree for a while. The shortfall is $500 million. As Director Good said, you know, we have about 140. It's $640 or $50 million we need. But we're going to hear later tonight, we're working on a plan to fill that gap without imposing a terrible burden on the people. But let's bring a good, I think we should bring a good thing to the city when we have a chance, and I think inflation is going to make this kind of thing virtually impossible in the future. This is a narrow window. You know, if I thought we could buy this in 2 years for anything approaching the same price, I'd say, well, let's just wait. But I don't think we can. I think this is really a one-shot deal. So that's where I am.
Director Christina Casavage.
You know, when you have to run a campaign and you have to go out and you have to talk to people and you've got to ask them to trust you with their vote and vote for you, and they've got to trust that you're going to do what's in the best interest of the citizens and what it is that the citizens are asking for. You know, people, you have to earn their trust and earn their vote, and there's something about that. I think when you have to fight to get people's votes and to earn that trust, you just think about it differently. And so I always try to think, you know, what are people telling me? What are people asking me? And, you know, I don't get on social media a lot. You know, I work 2 jobs. I'm not on social media a lot, but people call me or they email me or they hear things or they'll say, I saw this on Facebook. And I haven't had anybody for this. You know, I feel like there's more people up on this platform than there are out in the community that are wanting it. And I mean, it's nothing against you, Drew. I think you've got a good park as it is. I will say every time I'm there, though, that yellow slide's always out of commission. Does that thing work?
It does work, yes, ma'am. There is certain times we have to close it down to maintain it.
You know, because it seems like we need to take care of what we've got before we start adding things. So I think you're doing a good job over there. I think it's a nice park as it is. But there's just, you know, for me, I just, you know, I feel like I've heard from a lot of people. I've been taking a lot of phone calls about this, a lot of emails, and not one person has been in favor of it. Is anyone here in favor of it? No. Not one person? All right, thank you.
A lot of kids out there.
Well, I will say the argument about the kids, I mean, there's a reason we don't let kids vote till they're 18. You know, if I listened to my kid, I'd be driving a Barbie car, living in a house made out of gingerbread.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. A few more comments. We have a good park as it is. You know, we've said that same thing about the convention center. And for years, Director George Casavas has been advocating for a kitchen in that convention center. All of our parks, they were fine as they were. But we've all, including our citizens, including those that needed handicap accessibility, were advocating for more and better parks. And we can always keep things as they are. But there's a portion of the community that wants things better than what they always have been. I know I do, and I have wanted for my kids, but now my kids are grown. So we need to not just do what Director Settle says. This park is more than just for the kids. The few times that I've been out there, there are, tons of kids, but there are adults as well as seniors. So don't be fooled. And also, I remember in talking to Drew, the group from Kansas City, they come multiple times a year, if I'm correct?
Correct. They'll come 2 to 3 times a month throughout the 4 months.
For the month. Fantastic. And also, I believe that, isn't there some fire department training that happens at that
Correct.
facility?
So during this week, fire department is training with their flooding team. I mean, you can discuss more of what they're doing, but they are using our wave pool to help training for the future issues of Portsmouth.
Thank you. So with those things being said, and to address the other comments about not all citizens will use the water park, not all citizens use every amenity that we have. Not all citizens use the sidewalks or the streets or the convention center or the parks, but we still invest in ourselves as a city and in the city's future. And again, I think that we're able, financially able, to maneuver both of these things. Continue to seek the grants for the transmission line, the water, the things that we need to do. But we've always done that. We've always taken care of business and tried to move forward. Thank you.
Director George Casavage.
Mayor, or Carl, should we not be voting on item 6 first, the lease, before we do the slides? If they approve the slides and don't approve the lease, then what happens?
Both are not connected. They're the same topic. But the city, the board can determine to purchase the slides and install it or hold them.
But if the lease doesn't pass, then what happens if you buy the slides?
They could still actually be installed, and as Colby had mentioned, then our position would be that the lease, the expenses for maintenance would be split between the county and the city.
Well, because the current lease runs to 2032.
Correct.
It goes 8 more years in the future.
Correct.
And we don't, it is in place, and nothing here is changing that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Director Christina Casavage.
I'd like to call the question.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
The motion is to approve item number 5. Directors LaVon Morton.
You know, it's a hard vote. It's a hard vote, and I understand what the people are saying, but I'm a great believer in the future of Fort Smith, and I know that we will. There is a way to get the consent decree handled, and I've been working on that for a while myself with other people, and no other directors, but with other people. So I'm going to vote yes.
Excuse me.
George Katsavas.
Sorry to interrupt. This is my first time here, and I'm not really sure what the rules are, but I would like to just say one thing. If I could, just be less than 1 minute.
That's up to the mayor.
Not at this time, sir. We apologize for that. Continue the roll call, ma'am.
George Katsavas.
We're voting on item number 5?
Correct.
This isn't a hard vote for me, no.
Christina Katsavas.
No.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Rigo.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 in favor and 3 opposed.
Okay, thank you. This time we'll go to item number 6.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Okay.
Thank you.
We can. That's good. Let's take.
10 minute, Mayor?
Yeah, let's do a 10-minute.
Thank you.
We're going to reconvene. Thank you very much. I've got a copy. Okay. And we'll let her have it. Okay. We're going to reconvene. Director Martin and Director George Cassavage, if you would, join us.
I'm ready.
You ready? Okay. Item 6. You ready for item 10?
2 hours in, rolling on 6.
This time we will go to item number 6 on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. The sixth item on this evening's agenda is a resolution authorizing execution of a lease agreement and agreement concerning aquatics facility at Ben Guerin Regional Park between the City of Fort Smith and Sebastian County relative to Parrot Island Water Park. This was tabled at the August 6th regular meeting, tabled again to this meeting at the August 20th regular meeting. The item on the agenda, since it is tabled, must contain the original item, including the lease, although the county, the quorum court, did approve a different lease and approved the county judge to conduct negotiations with the city. That has been forwarded to the entire board.
Director Settle.
At the appropriate time, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, at this time, are there any citizens' comments on item, ma'am?
Yes.
Madam Clerk.
We have multiple, the first being Joey McCutcheon, and each will have 2 minutes.
I just hope you have a heart, Mr. Settle, when the elderly are paying their increased water rates that you just raised, and when you vote next June to increase the water rates again to pay for the mismanagement of our water system. I hope you have a heart for those same elderly people. And tonight, when you increase sewer rates, what, 150%? I hope you have a heart for the shut-ins in our community who can't afford $5. I know we're just talking about a mere drop in the bucket at $4.2 million for the water slide, but I hope you have a heart for them. And mainly, Director Settle, I hope you have a head when this gentleman up here is going to go into a negotiation, and eventually this city will probably wind up in a receivership. I hope you have a head for that, because we're going to be facing a contempt order. We're going to be in Judge Holmes' courtroom because of what you did tonight. This was a symbolic vote. If you think the EPA is not watching tonight, if you think the Department of Justice isn't watching tonight, you are really sadly mistaken. This was a symbolic vote. And they understand the concept that you've got $4.2 million for bells and whistles. We're not talking about the children here. It's about the children. The children have a water slide. They have a very nice water park. It's about bells and whistles. And that's really a sad thing, that you wouldn't have a heart for the people who can't afford your next tax increase. That tax and spend mentality of the folks over here on my right and to their left is really disheartening.
Thank you.
Next, we have Terry Hargrove.
Hello again. I feel like we need to hold the county accountable to their original contract, and they should be responsible for the maintenance. If we force these water slides on them, I think we'll end up in court and spending a lot of our money trying to prove that we could add those water slides even though they didn't want to. And now you have to pay for it. Well, we didn't want it. And we're going to end up using our money in court over something that most of us really don't agree with. I did have a question for clarification. Is space still an issue with the parking? I'm hearing yes, and I'm hearing no.
Parking, that's still an issue. Space for the slides, not an issue.
So you're making the park bigger, but not anywhere to park all the people that you want to come to the park.
I think that's
Yes or no?
I think that's part of the questions that we need answered for this item.
Okay.
I think the language was really a little ambiguous around the parking, so I would like more clarification as well.
Yeah. Only because I'm concerned that, okay, yeah, we're going to increase all the park, but now there's nowhere for those people to park when they come there. We know that parking is an issue in other places in town where we have events. I had another question for clarification. Thank you for your patience. Can the general fund be used for other things or not? I'm seeing a yes, and then I've been seeing no's.
Well,
okay, so we have to vote on if we want to use the money that way. All right. I also understand, man, it is a small little bit of money on a really big problem, but it shows our priority.
That's right.
To me, it shows our priority of what's important to us. And then it's not just the cost of putting those things in, it's the maintenance that goes along with it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have James Giltz.
Hey, directors. My comment today might be a little bit of a moot point based on what Administrator Gaffigan was talking about at the beginning. I was going to comment about from what I had heard of the lease originally when we were considering it, it seemed like just a really bad deal, regardless of whether or not we were buying the water slides. From what it was read like to me as someone attending the meeting, was that we were going to get foisted with all of the maintenance costs. We were going to get foisted with basically all of the responsibilities, but not actually own anything, but not actually get the advantage of a park, not actually get the control of an area. That addition of the lease, even for $1, seems like a terrible set of risks without advantage. My comment was going to be, I think that if we're going to consider this at all, we really need to re-evaluate that lease and come up with something new and more beneficial for the city, safer for us from an operational standpoint before we actually vote on it and consider it. Again, thank you, Administrator Gaffigan, for pointing out that that's not the lease, I guess, question mark, that we're voting on today?
That is correct.
Okay, but that's my comment in general, is that I think we need to be very attentive about that and not just accept something at face value to make sure we're making a good choice for the foreseeable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Next, we have Joe Elskin.
First of all, I need you to laugh at me because I really signed up for number 5, but I put number 6.
Ha 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 ha.
But I do feel like this lease is a Sebastian County amenity. I don't think it should be on us just. And so I definitely feel like you have to not distrust, but trust and verify and make sure that we aren't spending a penny more than we need to. And I would also like to, wish that something as contentious as this, that to me satisfies the more wealthy people, that it would be put to a bigger vote, because it's pretty obvious that quoting the 65% wanting a water park does not mean the same thing as quoting 65% wanting more amenities, 5 million more amenities. for the water park. So I'm sad, but there's always a future, and maybe there'll be a little bit more engagement with the community before a contentious vote is taken. And I definitely feel like you need to really look at this lease. Thank you.
That's all. That's all.
That's all. Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, we've introduced the item. No further comment.
Mayor, may I make a motion to table this item?
I'll second that.
To the second meeting in November to allow for our city administrator to work with the county on, of course, if they pass something, they want to negotiate with you. So see if there's a better lease or if we keep what we got. But I think if we keep what I got, if we can get a better lease, I'm fine with that. But if not, I'm going to keep what we got, but I'd like to table it till the second meeting in November.
To the second meeting in November?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll second that.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I have a comment also.
Okay, make your comment.
Well, this is a really bad lease. I agree with everyone that's talked about it. Having us be responsible for taking the park down whenever it's finally demolished is not what was agreed to in 2012. And there's really no reason for them to all of a sudden, because it's the first I've heard of that particular provision just in the writing here. And I also want to comment on some things that were said about, I can assure you the EPA and the Justice Department both know full well that it is not appropriate to pay for utility matters with funds that come from the general fund, and they would never advocate that. They might say, well, we're not going to sue you over it, but they're never going to advocate that. And they've never, in all these years, asked us to take money. And I'll ask this question to City Administrator Gefkin. They have never one time in all these years asked us to take money out of the general fund to pay anything in the utility department. Is that an accurate statement?
That is an accurate statement.
And they never will. That would be my prediction.
No, they've been forceful with us to raise rates and/or sales tax.
And they've been forceful for a long time, and we haven't done it because we want to get the best deal we can for the citizens, which is contrary to what we hear from the comments from some people.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Is this on the motion to table?
Yes, it is.
Directors George Katsavas?
No.
Christina Katsavas?
So we're voting to table?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Settle?
Yes.
Martin?
No.
Rigo?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Morton?
Yes.
Motion passes 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
This time we'll go to item number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. The seventh item on this evening's agenda is a resolution authorizing the city administrator to propose a 2036 consent decree program deadline and to continue to negotiate a consent decree modification.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to table?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second to table. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Well, a comment?
Is there
Yes, comment.
Is there an end
Make
date?
your comments.
Is it table next meeting? When do you table it to?
What? September 17th.
September 17th.
Okay. So my comment is this. I know there's a financial plan that goes with this, and, the board needs to see it, and basically as soon as possible. We need time to look at it and understand it. And because to pass this in its current form, a 10-year agreement, something that would give us 10 years to complete the consent decree without understanding how we're going to pay for it would be gross negligence on the part of the board. And I know that none of us are in favor of that. So that's why I want it tabled, and I'd like to see the financial plan really as soon as we can get it in our hands. And I also would say we need to have 2 public hearings as soon as possible, again, before the 17th, where as many directors as possible are in the public hearings, and we answer questions about this once we've all fully understood it as much as possible. Then it may be necessary to have other people there, at least by telephone. But my idea is this, we have one chance. We have a chance for a 10-year extension from what the original date was, and But if we're going to do it, we've got to make sure we've got a financial way to do it that's not overly burdensome to the people who are going to pay for it. So we need the public sessions to try to help people understand what we're doing and why. And it is incorrect. You know, in my approach to this, and I've got the words written from what we've seen here, if we do this properly, we will never have more than a 3.5% rate increase during the term of this agreement through 26.
Per year?
Per year, right. We won't have the 18 and the 19 because we need to write provisions in there that if we borrow money on a bond issue or WIFIA or SRF or any other source, or if we pass the sales tax, we can apply that money to reduce the 18 or 19 down to 3.5. And that's about $5.5 million a year. That's all it is. So if we generated $100 million with bonds, we could stretch that 20 years and have 3.5% for 20 years. Now you got to pay off the bonds, but if we do the 3.5%, we're going to have the money to pay off the bonds. I'm confident. Okay? So that's my comment.
Director Rigo.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question for Director Morton. I don't disagree. I just, for clarity's sake, you're looking to have the work and the meetings and the things done on this done prior to the end of September, correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, basically my theory was we'd have the financial plan discussed at the next study session, if that's possible. And if we have it in a form, it can be sent where it can be sent out, send it out as soon as possible. And then we would have the public meetings next week on maybe Monday and Thursday or whatever nights people tend to be available. But we have two different meetings, and we give people a chance to ask questions and be prepared to respond.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Settle, and then Director Good, and then Director Neil Martin.
Thank you, Vaughn, for suggesting a table. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for suggesting a table. That's what I was going to do tonight. I was actually going to go a bit longer. I'd like to see the administration and Lance. I know this might be a task, and if it takes a bit longer, it's okay, but we need some maps. We need maps from each ward. We need to know what work has been done and what work is left. You know, if it's a 12-inch line, we got it up to 16, and show me that line on the map. At Denman, 12 to 16. Each ward, what work is left. And then probably when we come back in 2 weeks, I got some other comments because, you know, what I don't want to get to ourselves into is the same thing we're into now, where inflation hits, other things happen, costs go up, and something that cost $1 million 4 years ago is now costing $3 or $4 million. There's got to be ways to put protections on our citizens that way. You know, just because prices go up doesn't mean our citizens got to take the brunt of it. And that's where I'm at. You know, this thing was 12 years. Now that should have been done in 28. Now we're going 36. It's 8 more years extension. But my understanding is we only had 5 occurrences last year. 5 wet weather occurrences last year. Is that right, Lance?
No, sir.
But I mean, but didn't you tell me it was 5 at 5? I thought it was 5. There's a point to where the diminished return hits. So I'm good with your table in it. I like the neighborhood meetings. If we can get some maps to show what's left, it takes longer to get that, I'm good. But 3 years ago and 10 days ago, 3 years ago and 10 days ago, we had a meeting talk about consent decree. And I asked that the Department of Justice and the EPA come to Fort Smith to visit with our citizens, to visit with this board. I'm going to again ask for that. I don't want a low-level staffer. I want the man in charge, the man on the upper left-hand corner in those conference calls. I don't know what his name is. I apologize. Come here, visit with us, town hall meetings with our citizens, and hear and see what's been done. We can't put all this burden just because somebody's trying to meet some deadline, and we have done so much since 2011. We did a bunch of work before the consent decree, and we're doing a bunch of work after the consent decree was passed. So I think it's upon us to have them here, let the people talk to them, and let them see all boots on the ground what's really going on. Because I think when they see it and they hear from our citizens, our negotiations might be better than we think. Thank you.
All
right, let's vote to table.
Okay. We had a couple more comments. Director Good and then Director Von Morton.
Thank you once again, Mayor. Just a couple more comments. I want to thank Director Morton for bringing up the table, as his Director Settle did. It's often talked about, business being done, behind the doors, under the desk, and this is just another opportunity to have this public hearing to show transparency of the issues and what we're facing. I mean, the real items that we're facing, not just increasing someone's taxes or making it hard on the elderly or the shut-in. This has been an issue that's been on the table for us to take care of this particular utility, and the fees should take care of that utility, just as in any other department with anything else. But I did want to speak to Ms. Terry Hargrove's comments about shows our priority. I thought that, honestly, that we were being forced to make a decision tonight with what we knew, because we knew that, the state and EPA were giving us a deadline, and they are. But because there's a deadline, Director Morton is absolutely right. We need to be as well informed on the matter as possible, not just the board, but our citizens. So thank you again, Director Morton, for that. And we'll move forward. It's not going to be easy, but again, I do want to make this comment real quick. I was reading some old materials dating back when I first got on the board, and not the first time I got on the, not the first, when I first got on the board, but dating back to whenever my emails were about the consent decree. The amount was like $480 million is what was estimated. And this is not money that we owe to the state or the EPA. This is money that the city believed that it was going to take to fix what the consent decree was telling us we needed to do.
That's correct.
And right now it's jumped up to over $600 million because of not only inflation, but because at the time we didn't see all the problems that we have noticed making these corrections. So in making the corrections, that's also, and addressing those corrections as we go, fixing those corrections as we go, has increased the amount of time spent and money owed, not even owed, amount of money that we are talking about spending on the consent decree. So again, this is not money that we owe the government, the federal government. The stipulated penalties, however, is what we do pay. Thank you.
Director Lavon Morton, and then.
Okay. And I'm going to use this opportunity to lead a little bit into the Utilities Commission that I've been advocating for and that we've yet to put on a study session. I think it would be a real short discussion. But I'm just going to preview for everybody what I would say the Utilities Commission would look into and would work with the Utilities Department to look into quickly, like immediately. One is all the people who get zero bills, no water usage, 1,500. That's not possible in this city. There are not 1,500 empty houses. Something's wrong. People are getting water and they're not paying for it. That's not fair to anybody out there or anybody in the city. Second thing is, where's the 15% missing water? The normal leakage or out of the system is maybe 15%. We're at 30%. Where's the 15%? We need to know that, because amazingly, if we could capture all or most of that 15%, we wouldn't have to expand the water treatment, and that's $70 million that we would save for a number of years until maybe after the transmission line was saved. So that's number two.
Are you making a motion to put that on the Lavon, you putting a motion to put on the?
No, well, I mean,
It's going to go on.
I'll make a motion to put it on.
It's going on a regular meeting agenda, but right now, with
okay,
the board
so I'm going to finish what I'm saying, though. The third thing is, I would want a plan for the SSOs. I want to know exactly where they are, and I want them fixed. Those are what generate these daily penalties, and whatever we need to do to get those fixed as soon as possible, we need to do it. The fourth thing I would want the commission to look into is taking the commission and doing what basically Director Settle said. Look at all the work that's been done, all the work that's yet to be done, and laying it out on a grid, hiring the very best consulting engineering firm in the United States. If they come from New York, California, Alabama, Michigan, I don't care, the very best one, and saying, You come in here and you help us figure out the order to do this work in and the most efficient way to do it. The people deserve that. The people deserve that. And so those are my comments. Those are the things I would have that commission immediately start working on.
Director Neil Martin.
So does a financial plan exist outside of what we saw in this document today, which has 3.5% rate increases for a period of time, then 19%, 19%, 15%? Does that exist?
We do have that plan, and we've been developing a different plan to try to refinance some of our bonds in order to free up additional cash within our current rate structure.
So the way I understand it is we either raise rates 156% over the course of time, or we bond this out and we pay it out over 20, 30 years. That's what's available to us at this point.
And some of the rates are required to meet the debt service covenants and have sufficient cash to pay those bonds.
One of the things we keep talking about is this is a 10-year extension. That's not really true.
Yes, it is true.
We've already gotten 5.
Well, actually, it's not been approved
It's
yet.
not been approved, but via force majeure.
The judge did grant 5 years for the city's ability to prove that to remain within the end of 2026 deadline, which is the official deadline. It's January 2 of 27, but we say 12/31/26. That the cost, the fees, the sewer charges were going to be over 2.5% of median household income. Judge Holmes agreed and gave us the 5 years. The requirement after that was that we would show a plan to the Department of Justice in order to get that time approved. And as Paul had mentioned last week, that was going to be a fruitless endeavor because the amount of time we need exceeded the 5 years. We had asked for an additional 10 years on top of the 5.
So making it a
25
year.
That's correct. And so what we wound up doing was, with negotiations, DOJ held firm and EPA held firm to the 5 years and the additional 3 years. And you've seen some of the rate increases that have been provided by the Department of Justice and EPA, and their statement that they do not want any backloading of work, and that they feel that the additional 3 years added to the 5 is more than sufficient to get the work done. And to do so, they begin with rate increases starting next year at 15.5%, which is against the sales and use tax ordinance that was passed for the 5/8% for the consent decree work. And so, we've held firm to that, saying this is what was approved by the board and eventually by the voters. So that's where we've held that. And at our last meeting, the Department of Justice showed us a 10-year plan that adhered to the sales and use tax ordinance that was approved by the voters. And they said, well, we're just showing you this for purposes, just to illustrate what it would look like. And then they came back and said, well, you please choose one of the plans from 2036, and they were about to go no further than that. And then they came back and said, well, yes, 2036 is on the table, but not with the 3.5% through 2030. And the resolution, which, when the vote is taken, will be tabled to the September 17th meeting, is to propose that the version of the 2036 plan with the 3.5% and no more through the 2030. And we are looking to provide additional ways to say, can we raise money through grants or through refinancing? So to say that the Department of Justice wants the rate increases built in to the modified consent decree. And we would like language that says, well, we'll do that rate increase. However, if there are other ways to raise funds through grants, through a sales tax, additional sales tax, through any other means or refinancing bonds, If it's not needed, we want a revenue target, not a rate increase target. And so that's what we would be proposing to the Department of Justice. So that's what we're working on currently and have been working on. Of course, with the Department of Justice's plan and using many of their assumptions, one item we would request also is to say that we are relying on their assumptions for growth in the current sales tax, for the growth of the city, for inflation. And should any of those assumptions prove wrong, that we have the ability to go back and address that with them. So those are the items that we're looking at proposing. And of course now, as Mr. McCutcheon has mentioned, they do watch our meetings, and so they now know several items that we will be putting forth, but that's hardly rocket science. It's something just to protect the city of Fort Smith.
Any other comments? The motion was to
table to the September 17th meeting, and I'll be adding and adjusting the agenda, which does not need to be part of the motion. I will amend the agenda for next week's study session to include this discussion.
Okay. Thank you. We did have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
We'll go to item 8.
Thank you, Mayor. The 8th item on this evening's agenda is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute change order number 2 with Vortex Services, LLC, for the emergency sanitary sewer replacement project. And our Director of Water Utilities, Lance McAvoy, will speak to this and answer any questions.
This project was the one that we had this gigantic sinkhole in the alley. Change order number 2 is to add $97,378.75 and 28 days to the overall length of the contract. This cost was due to several factors, one being that we could not obtain the schedule or the type of pipe, so we had to use a little bit better pipe than what we had planned. That increased the cost, as well as due to the depth, the cost of the backfill was much higher. This project did include some SSOs while it was done. However, before everyone, that was passed on to the contractor because it was the contractor's responsibility to ensure that no SSOs occurred. So their price was reduced due to those SSOs, and that was $2,250 that they are not receiving, so that we can have those for future SSO penalties. So this is just the change order to add a few additional funds and to a few days. And then the next item, with your permission, Mr. Mayor, is basically declaring the project complete. And item 9, there are several photos. You can see where we actually made some improvements, like on page 210, what the alleyway looked like before and what it looks like now. We return that to where it's a usable state. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Motion to adopt a resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Board comments. Director LaVon Warden.
Okay, my question is that this is some work that we probably would have had to have done eventually under the consent decree. Is that a fair statement?
That is a completely accurate statement.
Okay, so really spending this money is really kind of the same as spending it on the consent decree, and we won't ever have to repair those pipes again for a reasonable period of time.
Yes, in fact, these pipes were in our plan. They failed before we got to them.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Director Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, we're getting close. Item number 9.
Thank you, Mayor. The ninth item on this evening's agenda is a resolution accepting the project as complete and authorizing final payment to Vortex Services LLC for the emergency sanitary sewer replacement project. And again, Lance he did speak to this.
He just spoke to it, okay.
But if you have any additional questions, he'll answer them.
Okay. Are there citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Motion to adopt a resolution.
So moved.
Thank you. Any board comments? Seeing none?
Okay, well, so now,
Director
is this,
LaVon
which one is this? Is this?
Item number 9.
This is the final pay to Vortex.
Yeah, no comments.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further comments, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
Yes.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Go to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. There are 3 items on this evening's consent agenda. The first item, 10A, is a resolution accepting bids for the purchase of water and wastewater chemicals for 2024-2025. Item 10B is an ordinance declaring an exceptional situation and waiving the requirements of competitive bidding for the purchase of liquid chlorine for 2024-2025 for Water Utilities Department. Item 10C is an ordinance declaring an exceptional situation and waiving the requirements of competitive bidding for the purchase of potassium permanganate for 2024 to 2025 for the Water Utilities Department. And if you have any questions, our procurement manager, Charity Gregory, will come up and ask them.
Okay.
Answer them.
Thank you. Any item that you would like to pull for separate discussion?
I have questions.
Yes.
Charity, would you come on up, please?
Just all I have is for each one of these, what's the total spend? Like total spend for A, total spend for B, total spend for C?
It depends on how much they purchase. So I have the total spend for the liquid chlorine will be around $414,000, but on the rest, it does depend on how much they purchase and what their purchasing is.
Okay, so when we get that, can you let me know?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll let you know what last year's was. But it should be a little lower this year.
Okay, yes, I would like to see last year's.
Yeah, okay, we can get that for you.
Director LaVon Morton.
Lance may have that.
Lance has it.
So combined, we are projecting the 2024 cost for water of about $3.2 million. 2025 for drinking water will be between $3.3 and $4 million. On wastewater, we're projecting $1.1 million, and the projected cost for 2025 will be $1 million to $1.4 million. And as Charity had mentioned, this depends on production. So if we produce more water, we use more chemicals. If we have a wetter year than what we've had, we will use more chemicals for treatment.
Can you get that? Can you get with me after this so I can
Yes.
note that? Thanks.
Director LaVon Morton.
Mr. McAvoy, so if you use exactly the same volume of chemicals, since they give us exactly the same price, it would be the same total cost. Is that accurate?
If we use the exact same amount, yes, it would be the exact same cost.
And do you recall what you budgeted for this in the 2024 budget? Did you budget an increase over 23?
Yes, we budgeted $3.6 million for water and $1.2 million for wastewater.
Okay, so how does that compare to like what we'd spend if we had the same volume? 3.6 and 1.2. What would the numbers? What percentage was that over the prior year?
I want to say that was close to a 10 to 12% increase, but we saw a large increase
In the
in
prior
cost
year.
from the 22 to 23, 23 to 24.
So we got a potential here to save $400,000 or $500,000. In if assuming it's 10 to 12 and it comes in the same and the volume's approaching the same, then we got a chance to save about $500,000 there, if I round kind of up there on the total cost, which would be good in helping us get closer to passing the bond covenants. That's the point I'm trying to make. That I didn't see a 20 or 25% inflation in the cost here like we've seen in past years, which is good.
You're correct.
Director Christina Katsavas.
Are these expenses not in the normal course of business? Why are we waiving competitive bidding for these items?
Because there's no competition. So like liquid chlorine, that's the only vendor in our region, and the other one as well. Lance can probably answer better. But.
Exactly what Charity said. Liquid chlorine, they have consolidated because, of course, liquid chlorine can be used for nefarious means. So it is actually under the Homeland Security Act for terrorism. Water plants do have a waiver, as do wastewater plants. However, we have high security and we have leak protection for that. The potassium permanganate, this is a sole source item for this region, and this comes in a tote that we use a crane to lift it up. It sets on and it auto feeds so that we're not dealing with loading 55-pound bags, which is very unsafe because potassium permanganate is a strong oxidizer. Just getting the crystals on your skin will burn you. So this is already set up for a safety precaution as well.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions? Director LaVon Morton.
How close is the nearest fire hydrant to the water plant where you use this potassium permanganate? Nearest fire hydrant.
It's within the plant grounds. I mean, we have them all over the plant grounds because
it's close, right?
Yeah, I mean,
if you drop the bucket and it started a fire, you'd be.
Yeah, you'd have to have something for it to interact with, and things that we don't store near potassium permanganate, things like diesel fuel, it will spontaneously combust.
Okay.
Any type of solvent. So these are, if you remember right from the tour we did at Lee Creek, where the pumps were in the raw pump station, you'll remember there was equipment, there was piping, there was a lot of concrete, and then there was this tall structure that had a square top on it. That was actually the bin of potassium permanganate. So if it did spill, there's nothing for it to react with on the ground other than concrete, which it is inert. Concrete's
And I
inert.
assume we kind of inspect those bins and make sure they're structurally sound every year or every 2 years, whatever.
Upon receipt and before it is put in place.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on the consent items? If not, need a motion to adopt all consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Director Zarigo?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Morton?
Yes.
George Katsavas?
Yes.
Christina Katsavas?
Yes.
Settle?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
This time we'll go to the officials forum. This late hour, I have no further comments. Director Rigo.
Nothing for me, sir. Thank you.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. I heard that the Lincoln High School class reunion was here this weekend. I heard it was a very, very good event. Saw some of the photos. Hey, that I could not attend, but just want to thank those that put that event together and bringing those Lincoln alumni back to Fort Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, let me tip my hat to the Fort Smith Convention Center. They did an extraordinary job and received rave reviews from all of those in attendance. So thank them for that. Director LaVon Morton.
On this date, I have nothing.
Okay. Director George Katsavas.
Just two things, Mayor. I want the board to consider looking into creating an animal advisory board of 7 people, 1 from each ward, 1 from the 3 at large, to advise the board, to meet quarterly and advise the board on issues with animals in the city limits. Also, Carl is a man who's willing to donate a free air conditioner to the shelter, and I haven't heard a word since from the shelter about it.
Well, who is willing to do that?
But there's a gentleman here in town said the cost doesn't matter, but he and have you heard anything?
No, nothing.
Could you call Brenda and check with her?
I can call that. And also, we already have an Animal Services Advisory Board.
We do?
Mm-hmm.
Where are they at?
They have not met.
Okay, good.
I really thought we disbanded that.
That's what I thought.
I agree. I thought we did too.
Did we disband them?
But
I think so. That was my understanding.
Sherry, did we disband them?
Would have to verify that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll take that under advisement. And
Thank you.
Get the details on it. Director Christina Casavage.
Nothing for me.
Director Kevin Settle.
I'd like to thank the mayor, Carl, Tim Allen, Gator, and everybody put together the Northside Southside flyover and festivities there. It was a great celebration of the military coming to our city. I was told that this was the first and only F-35 flyover over a high school football game that we'll ever have, and it was here. Special moment for everybody there. The big flag on the north side field was great. Great game. Turned out to be a great game. Both teams played well. And so it shows a lot of heart and who we are as a community. So I want to thank everybody, Mayor Carl, Tim, Gator, and the whole team that put it all together. Chamber, everybody. Thank you, Mayor.
It was fun, but man, you had to keep your eyes toward the sky. They came fast. Director Neil Martin.
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
You got it. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank all of you for your patience and for coming to join us tonight. Thank you.